Hello, everyone. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. Today is June 20, 2019. As a reminder, this meeting is recorded and published on YouTube. Today, we're going to do planning for the next quarter, Q3, which will be the 1.16 version of Kubernetes. I sent out a link to the spreadsheet that we used for planning, and we added a new sheet to this spreadsheet to start tracking the items that we think we should be working on for the next quarter. To populate this, I copied over the items from the 115 from 115 that we didn't finish. And so what we can do is review those and see if they're still applicable and who wants to work on them. And of course, feel free to add to the bottom of this anything that you think we should be working on. So the important things here will be to figure out, 1, are we going to work on this? 2, what the target status should be. 3, what the priority should be, and who should be working on it. And so with that, let's go ahead and get started. First up, we have CSI Migration. Deep or David, can one of you give an update on this and what the plans are for this quarter?
Hey, yes. So with CSI Migration, we managed to get most of the pieces done in 1.15 for the alpha. And for 1.16, the plan is to basically move to beta, improve test coverage, tie up some loose ends from around unit tests and stuff like that. So mainly improve test coverage, get the volume attach limits support in. I know that's tracked as a separate item. Complete some work around resizing, that's still outstanding. And documentation and stuff like that.
Cool. So moving to beta, there's already an enhancement issue. And are you, Cheng, and David still the right people to work on this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next item is...
So I guess column E should be 1.16, right?
Sorry, what's that?
The heading for column E, target status.
Targets, oh yeah, good catch. Okay, next item is CSI online offline resizing volume expansion to beta. A month, are you on the line by any chance?
Yeah.
Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I think that sounds accurate, and yeah.
And the signees are okay?
I should be the signee. I
Okay.
haven't heard from ML in a while.
Okay. Do you know who can help review this?
I think Michelle, she's been reviewing it so far.
Okay. All right, next item is block volume support for CSI. What do we want to do with that?
I think the big question that we've been talking about is getting some effective scale testing and production testing on it.
Okay.
The trick is nobody's really had any good answers on how to do that. So,
Other than just...
Do we have hardware? Is there resources that we can do skill testing on? Because I think we know we need to do skill testing. We just need the resources to do it.
So there's a separate item for scale testing, and nobody signed up for it last quarter. We have the hardware for it, and we have the kind of resources for it. We just don't have people working on it.
We just don't have the lead to do it. Okay. Assign this to me, and I will, if Saad, who do I contact to, to like coordinate with the resources to actually do this?
So Michelle has been talking to the SIG scalability folks. And
okay.
They're very interested in helping us with this. So in fact, let me see.
Do we actually consider this a prerequisite to moving this to beta, or can we just move it? Yeah. I mean, I don't know why we're being so stringent on this, I guess, for the skill testing.
I think I remember Michelle saying we also want to know who is really using this in production. We want to know that before we moving that to GA.
Okay, so that's fair enough. I mean, but the things that would affect us from moving to, from going beta to GA, I guess are what, API? I mean, like just moving the API type, or?
I think it's also being confident in the implementation. This is probably one of the most complicated features that we have, because it's essentially taking the existing mount, unmount, attach, detach, and kind of touching all of those and replacing them with custom things for block, and getting that code path exercised, I think is what folks are looking for, kind of stress tested to say, oh yeah, we're confident that this will work.
So even if we were doing scale testing, that's going to be like performance IO stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if scale testing is the right answer for block. I think it's more kind of stress testing.
Right. We need a lot of people using this as quickly.
Yes.
The problem is nobody wants to use it in its current state.
So what's wrong? What's the things that we need to fix to get it to a place that people are willing to just dive in?
Well, I think the alpha and beta status has been the main thing, right? So
beta's a pretty strong commitment.
Yep, you don't have to convince me. I totally agree. You and I have had this conversation, so.
So maybe we should just set a deadline where we say, after 2 releases in beta, we're going to just move it to GA. And if there's bugs
I think it's fair to say that, we definitely want to see some production usage before we go to GA. I just don't know how we promote that. Or maybe that's what we need to do, is actually promote it and try and socialize it and talk about it more and see if we can get people to actually use it.
Okay.
John, in all fairness, like, at Red Hat, like, we're okay taking stuff that's beta and, giving it a stronger support statement. So maybe us, keeping it beta and then moving it to GA with an OpenShift will give us some of the production time that we need to, consider it actually GA upstream.
Yeah, I mean, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? So it's kind of tough to.
Right. I mean, there's lots of features we support that are beta in Kubernetes, and we're willing to call it GA. So maybe this is just one of them.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So, Saad, maybe we just leave this guy off until, if the community's not comfortable moving this to GA yet, until we have production use,
Okay.
You can just assign it to me, and then we'll do it, as kind of a low priority thing.
Okay. So let's call this a P3 or a P2.
That was blocked. That was online off on the resize.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and we got this guy to 2 already. Okay.
Okay, so this is 2. So you're saying assign this to you.
Yeah.
And
we'll just do the soak time, in OpenShift basically, and look for customers. Because I already know John and some other people are looking for this. We'll be looking for and using this in our upcoming releases. Yeah, at this point, I think it's more just a soak time thing than an actual feature movement, right? We need some soak time, and then we can move the feature.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, sorry. This is Michelle. I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I think it's not just soak time, but it's just improving our test coverage and also running some real scenarios. So I think Ben has been starting to do some real testing with this.
This has been, I joined late.
Yeah, and he actually found some serious issues. So I think this is more than just, oh, let's just wait around kind of thing. There's actually issues that we need to resolve.
And do you have a list of those issues in place, or are you?
Well, the one that gives me shivers is 74313. Because it basically means if you use Iscuzzy and raw blocks, your data will get corrupted, which is kind of scary.
73413.
74313.
I like how you have that memorized, Ben. That's amazing.
And it's not easy to fix. That's what makes. I mean, it's not going to be like a 10-line change to.
It's a fencing issue, right? I mean, it's if we effectively need to figure out how to fence off Iscuzzy devices a little bit better.
Well, yeah, and what makes it so nasty is that there are interactions between the file system, the Iscuzzy file system, and the Iscuzzy blocks, because they end up sharing the underlying session. So if you have a mixture of Iscuzzy file system and Iscuzzy blocks, it gets really thorny. So basically all that Iscuzzy code needs to be rewritten to have some common core that's shared between blocks and file systems. And right now it's basically two separate sets of code that share very little. So it's not going to be, I mean, I would have volunteered to fix it myself if I didn't think it would be like an 800-line change. It's going to be big to actually address this issue. But
Ben, let me ask you this: if I had engineering resources that were willing to work on this, would you be willing to take this at an architectural level and lead them through it?
Oh yeah. There was a PR that tried to fix this, done by I'm blanking. Matt Wong.
74627 is the PR.
Yeah, so Matt Wong attempted to fix this, and I tested his fix, and in my testing, the fix actually made things worse. So I gave him feedback that said, no, this is not the right fix. But then I guess he got busy working on other things, and I got busy working on other things, and we didn't pursue this. But so yeah, I'm totally willing to work with whoever wants to fix this, and I will test it, and I will give you the test cases, and I will run the test cases, and I will prove that the eventual fix was really solid, because I wrote a bunch of test cases to illustrate how bad the problem is to people here at NetApp.
Okay.
But the larger issue of raw blocks in general, I mean, I think Iscuzzy is probably one of the common protocols for raw blocks, but I'm sure that there are others that also matter. To Michelle's point, we really want to see people using it in production and saying, yes, I trust this. I trust my data to this stuff, because with Iscuzzy, I would say no, don't trust it. It's there are a few very specific circumstances where it won't do bad things.
No, I totally agree.
So yeah.
Okay, and I will look for a replacement resource. You said the PR was 7467?
74627.
Yeah, it's linked off the issue.
74313 was the issue?
Yeah.
Okay, I will find more engineering resources on our side to look at this, especially if you have test cases. I can get this resolved.
Well, the thing is, the test cases are just like bash scripts that work in my environment. They're not like E2E scripts I can just contribute. But if we can get them turned into like actual E2E tests, that would be the ideal case.
Is that something you'd be willing to commit to?
I don't have enough experience writing EDE tests to know how big of a commitment that would be. I'm interested in it, but I haven't done EDE test writing.
All right. So Ben, maybe I'll set up a call when we'll take this offline, and maybe you and me can step through it. You can show me what the scripts are doing, and then get an idea of what it'll take to do the test cases.
I love that idea.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. So it sounds like I'm putting your name down, Brad, as the dev lead on this, and hopefully you can find a resource for it. Ben will help architect it and review it. We're going to keep it in beta for this quarter. There are known issues that Ben's already tracking, and hopefully we can get some more stress testing and usage to find more issues and get this more stabilized. All right, moving on to the next item. We have scalability testing. So this is what we were talking about earlier. SIG scalability really wants us to start adding tests for storage to the scalability test suite. Currently, we don't really have any volume-related tests at all, so that path doesn't get exercised. Anyone interested in helping out with that? Okay, so what we'll do is leave that unassigned, and we'll see if anybody commits to it at a future point. If you're new to the SIG and you're kind of on the sidelines about where you should jump in, this might be a good opportunity to contribute. So we really, really need scalability tests, and this would help the SIG a lot. Moving on, next item is the CSI library, moving the mount library to the external common repo. Travis did a bunch of work here to refactor the in-tree code to make it extractable to allow it to be removed. Travis, are you still interested in continuing to work on it this quarter? Looks like Travis is not available. Vlad, would you happen to know if this is something Travis is going to be able to commit to?
At this point, I don't.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So let's put a question mark there, and then hopefully we can get confirmation offline.
Yeah, at least I've been still reviewing his PRs, and he's still been active on it.
Okay. So that sounds good to me, and we'll keep that as a P1 for this quarter. Pod node volume attach limits, implement the beta redesign. So as I understand, there was an attach limits for the entry code. We didn't have anything for CSI, the entry stuff. We weren't very confident. There were some issues raised about the way it was implemented. And so there was a proposal to redesign it and redesign it in such a way that it would also include CSI. I believe that design happened last quarter. Are we ready to implement this?
We have a PR. We missed the implementation by a whisker, actually. So
Perfect. So we're going to call this beta for this quarter, right?
yeah.
Okay. And so that looks good. Priority 1 seems right. Okay, next item is volume snapshot namespace transfer. So last quarter was design. I believe, did the KEP get approved or not yet? Actually, we haven't approved the KEP yet.
Correct. Right. And
So,
actually, I'm trying to figure out, since we're moving that to an external API, is the KEP even a valid thing anymore where it is?
it still is. Regardless of where it is, I think we should do a KEP to kind of document, hey, this is a Kubernetes feature and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I just didn't know if it was in the right place. So I will update that today with all the latest stuff.
Okay.
And then if we can get approved, we can start rolling.
Cool.
The next question I have on that is where we want this to live. Is this going to be a SIG storage effort or a?
Yeah, because technically it could be applied beyond SIG storage, right?
Yeah, since it's being changed to a generic API, now there's two pieces. There's the generic API and the CRDs and controller for that, and then there's the actual volume snapshot transfer implementation, right?
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that I think might be a good question to ask on the KEP as well.
Would maybe API machinery be a good SIG for this?
That seems right. We should probably help get them to review the KEP as well, and probably get an API review.
Is Tim still the right person to ping on that, or should I just do a generic ping to SIG API machinery?
I think a generic ping would be a good place to start, and if you don't get traction, Tim will be a good backup option.
Okay, I will do that. I will get that updated this afternoon.
Okay. And I foresee that this is probably going to be one of those controversial designs, so it'll be a little bit of an uphill battle, so be prepared for that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very interested in this, which means you're going to get a lot of feedback.
Great.
All right. Next item is address issues with CSI PVC code related to this. This was a set of bug fixes identified a while ago, which we haven't had time to implement fixes for. Michelle, do you know if Cough YC is still able to work on this?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Probably, yeah, remove his name from there. I would actually probably drop it down to a P3.
Okay.
These are pretty tight corner case issues, I think.
Okay. All right, next item is group volume snapshot consistency groups. Xing, is this something that's still being worked on and planned for this quarter?
Yeah. So Jen and I will still be working on the design of this. Yeah, we already discussed this once in our working group meetings.
Cool. And is it design or is it alpha this quarter?
Design.
Design. Okay, cool. And priority-wise, 1, 2, 3?
3. Oh, can leave it at 3 for now.
Okay. Next item is generic data source populators. The functionality here is today we have 2 types of data sources. One is a snapshot. The second, last quarter, we added cloning. And potentially we want to allow any sort of generic data source, meaning the thing that fills a newly created volume doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing that provisions it. This would enable things like having a populator that populates a new volume with a Docker image, for example. So you could have a Docker image populator. And the work required here would be somehow to do this in a backwards compatible way such that a populator would be able to read and write to a volume, but that volume would not be generally available to other workloads, regular workloads, until the populator was done populating it, writing data to it, and doing that in a backwards compatible generic way. And there's a lot of other use cases. I think folks would really like this feature, but it is fairly complicated to implement. So I think, John, you had a design app for this. Is it something you're still interested in working on?
Yeah, I am. There's so based on the feedback from that design, there's basically 2 pieces to this now. The first piece is the Kubernetes API pieces, including what you just described in terms of what to do with the volume, in terms of how to mark it, whether it's finalized or not. The other piece is the data source field, so we need to extend that again. I think what we'll need to do is just remove the filtering altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're going to allow external CRDs, then there's no other way that I know to do that. And then the other piece that we had kind of touched on and we never really hashed out is we talked about this model of a library or an SDK for this.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure that I have enough kind of insight into what you're thinking there. So I think at some point, maybe if we could chat
Sure.
and figure that out.
Okay. And then for this quarter, would this be design or is it almost ready for implementation?
Well, it depends. So if we went back to the original model and we didn't do the SDK route, I think that it could be ready for implementation this quarter.
Okay.
But if we want to stick with the SDK plan and stuff like that, I'd much rather know what the SDK is going to look like and what we're going to do there before I committed to any kind of design in the
Okay, that's fair. So let's leave it as design until we have more information, and if so, we'll go ahead and change it to alpha.
Okay, that sounds good.
Cool. Oops. All right, change this. All right, so we'll leave that. And P3 sounds okay to you for this?
Yeah, I think that's fair for right now. And we can always adjust it if things look better.
Cool. Next few items are for the generic drivers that the SIG still owns for CSI. Moving the NFS driver to a separate repo, moving the Iscuzzy driver to a separate repo, and moving the fiber channel driver to a separate repo. This, for some of these, the work has already begun, so they're kind of in different stages. Anybody interested in helping out with these? I don't know if Methusen's on the call or anybody else who's interested.
So, actually, I think the Iscuzzy one is ready to be promoted. Misaki's done some work lately. There's been a few things. I think it's ready for people to start using. I think we should we should try and get some mileage on it at this point.
Okay.
Misaki, are you on the call? Curious if you agree or not.
Yes, I'm on the call.
Okay. Would you agree with that, or?
Yes, we are working for implementing the provisional side of the NFS and Iscuzzy, and so it will eventually be usable in production environment.
Sorry, that was a provisioner?
Yeah.
Yeah, that part I'm still kind of, I'd like to talk about.
Well, I think it can still be usable without provisioning, right?
Yeah,
Just as like a replacement for the in-tree Iscuzzy.
Yes, that's what I was talking about, was replacing the in-tree. I'm not sure how I feel about the Golang plugin module to try and plug in drivers for it. That's the piece I'm not sure about.
Got it.
That's a separate conversation, I think.
Okay. Is there any other work that's planned for this quarter for the Iscuzzy driver? For example, having an official Docker image or CI/CD
Yeah, I
testing?
think that stuff still needs to be done to actually build and release the driver images.
Yeah, that would be the stuff that we need to add, but some of that is actually in progress already.
Okay.
So it's just outdated right now.
Okay, so we'll say for Iscuzzy driver, fit and finish, build image, CI/CD, etc. Is Misaki the right person to work on this?
It's up to him.
Misaki?
Which task?
The Iscuzzy driver, adding CI/CD, making the build image and all that kind of thing.
I think build image part was already done.
Okay.
I guess Patrick is doing some kind of work about testing. Is my understanding correct?
Sorry, who was that?
Patrick, I guess.
Oh, okay. Let's see, I think we had his name down.
I think there might be, we might have to figure out how to test Iscuzzy, because I think it requires like the environment and stuff to be set up correctly, which may not be the case in our current testing framework.
Right. Does anybody else on the call want to take ownership of this and help with testing and things like that?
I can try if we keep it a low enough priority.
Okay.
And if somebody else wants to move it along quicker, then just let me know. And because I think my bandwidth will be kind of limited, but I'm definitely vested in it. So.
Cool. Fair enough. Thanks, John. And then for the NFS driver, is it in a similar state where we're ready for your testing?
Yeah, I think NFS driver is almost ready. We just need to do the image building and set up the CI for it.
Okay. And anyone interested in owning the NFS driver this quarter?
I think I can help out with that. I know Patrick's working on the CI stuff.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Methusen.
Methusen, awesome.
And also I have to update, Michelle told me, assigned me to update the documentation for the NFS driver, so I'm working on that.
Okay. So image building, testing, CI/CD, documentation. And are you also interested in working on continuing to work on the fiber channel driver or not?
I haven't really got around to touching that in a while because
Okay.
so.
Anybody else interested in picking up the fiber channel driver? I think that one is still hasn't started yet. Okay, unless we have somebody volunteering to help move that. We'll leave that on the back burner for now. Next items are related to, so we kind of had three issues here. One was non-recursive volume ownership, revisit UID GID handling, and file permission handling for Windows. Are these worth combining into a single item or effort?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say no, actually.
You'd rather keep it apart?
Yeah, because the design that, I don't know if Zing is online, but she has only a solution for the recursive volume ownership change, and we do not yet have a design or anything for like revisiting for UID GID handling for Windows, or in general UID GID handling. We don't have anything concrete for that, so I would rather.
Here's my view on this, and why I said that we should probably move together is like we've tittled around on the on each little piece of this, but we haven't looked at it holistically. And I kind of feel like the design for this is something like we should just dive in and break it apart, right? Like we have like three different pieces here that we've looked at separately, but we haven't looked at it as like one whole piece quite yet. And we do have one design that for one piece of it, but I don't know. I think we need to spend some time like diving into the different pieces of this, but in the context of like the whole, all three items. Now, go ahead.
I was saying that the problem is we don't have like people who are willing to commit to designing the Windows permission handling, and like even the UID GID solution for like for Windows, or how the UID based permissions will work. It's pretty very gnarly problem, very tough to solve problem, and I don't know.
What we haven't done is a design for these three items yet.
I have a new person joining my team, so I should be able to dedicate that individual to the Windows piece and guide him through it. Is there a meeting I can join, or like I know this was kind of in my radar for 115, but I never got a chance to engage. But for 116, like, do you guys have a meeting or something we can hop into?
I think it might be worth starting one. I don't believe that there is one specifically for permissions.
Okay.
So we could start a work group that focuses on file permission kind of stuff. And then I'm okay leaving it as separate items just so we could have multiple assignees.
Sure.
So, I have a question about this one.
Uh-huh.
Are all the solutions we're looking at basically hacky solutions? Is anyone looking at like making the kernel changes that would actually make this like a clean and supportable thing to do?
So Jing started looking at it last quarter, and she had some kind of options which would stop the bleeding, so to speak. And the feedback that we gave her was, let's consider an API redesign where we step away from what we have today and come up with a new API.
Well, but I mean, fundamentally, this is just a hole in the container design that goes back more than a decade, right? They just forgot that this kind of thing matters when they implemented all the namespacing stuff in the kernel. And like the real way to fix this would be to go fix that design and add another abstraction layer in the kernel so that you can do these kinds of things. But
well, hang on a second. Hang on. So we've got a bunch of issues blended right here, right? The Windows issue is one thing. The UID GID handling is another thing, and then the recursive volume ownership is kind of another thing.
I think the UID GID is related to the volume ownership because it comes down to this basic problem that the UID GID bits get written to persistent storage, whereas UID GID mappings in containers are basically ephemeral. So container shuts down, another container pops up with same virtual UID GIDs, but different mappings, and the fact that the stable storage that gets mapped into it still has the old ones. And
that's an interesting take on it. Is you're saying that we don't necessarily need to do the recursive change and serialize it on disk. We just need to keep a map.
Yeah, I'm saying that the kernel should solve this for us, but I don't think the facility exists.
What would you imagine the kernel would do?
Much like the kernel has a UID, or what do they call it? The PID, not the PID, the UID GID namespace mapping. There needs to be another mapping at the VFS layer that you can say, okay, in this namespace, the VFS will also perform this other mapping that is different than the one that is performed at for the UIDs, GIDs in terms of permissions. Like the serialization of UIDs, GIDs onto disk needs to be something that can be controlled at the namespace level. And I don't think that Linux lets you do that. I think that
you need the same for Windows too, which might be more complicated.
Well, I assume everything's more complicated in Windows.
there's a SLNX problem here as well. Actually, like even if you fix the Jinx design fixes the for just the volume permission, but still like on SLNX and Apple distros, they're still doing recursive chcon. So that's a fix that has to come from container runtime actually, because we cannot fix it.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. Is the container runtime has a hole in the design, and we're trying to work around it with what I view as a bunch of hacks. I'm wondering if anyone is really trying to get at the root of the problem.
That's a great way of, I think, explaining this, Ben. It's like we've got 3 or 4 different hacks right here. They're all hack arounds for stuff that we need to just address in a more holistic way.
I think that's fair, but I think you have to have, there's a pretty long tail on, I mean, first of all, is anybody willing to step up and try and push something?
Oh yeah. I mean, to fix this in the kernel will probably take 5 years.
The other thing is given the length of time for that to propagate, I think, unfortunately, I think some sort of workarounds are
that's fair. I mean, we have to have
totally agree.
Now.
We need the hacks, but it would be nice if someone was thinking 5 years ahead and saying, let's make it not suck in the future.
Okay, so what we could do is have possibly multiple streams of work. One would be kind of figuring out this new design end to end, everything from potential kernel changes all the way up to Kubernetes API changes. And then the rest would be kind of more immediate hacky solutions to work around the pains that we are seeing today. The recursive volume ownership stuff is pretty painful, so if there's some temporary solution that would ease that pain, that would be good. File permission handling for Windows, I think, is kind of in a similar boat. If we can get an answer for it, great, but all of this stuff needs to be done in coordination with this new design, so that if the new design says that we should wait, then we can hold off on it. If there's something we can do short term, we go forward with it. I don't know if we need to revisit UID, GID separate from this new design. Maybe we can drop that. Thoughts?
I think we should keep it for the time being, because this new design item is kind of vague until we add details to it. Like the next quarter or like 2 weeks down the line, we'll wonder why we added that.
We just changed the revisit UID to that item. That's basically what we're doing. Is we're just adding detail to the revisit UID.
We're making it more vague than it was before.
Exactly. We used to wonder about what does revisit that item means. Then we'll be like, so we just made it more vague than before. So we we should keep it until we probably create a cap or link some Google Doc in the comment section, note section, so that we know what we're talking about, and then we can remove one of the items. That's what I would do.
Okay. Do you see the owners for both of these items being the same or different?
I think the owner should be same.
Okay. All right. So who wants to work on that?
So you can keep my name on this, I guess, and I'll coordinate. I feel like Ben has a pretty good idea on the solution.
Okay.
I don't know that we have an engineering resource identified to do the work, but maybe the work is figuring out what the work is. Right. You know?
Okay, and we'll call it design for the quarter. This is going to be massive. I doubt we're going to finish it, but it is an effort that we need to start. And P2 sounds correct for this.
Sure. Now the Windows, so the Windows handling of volume ownership, is there some patches or some just like regular basic level stuff that we need to do that's outside of the scope of this? I feel like file handling on permission on Windows is kind of its own separate thing that needs to be patched.
But there's a Windows equivalent of a chown. You can just go chown all your files.
Is all that stuff in good permission, or I mean, in good condition, or do we need to? I guess what I'm asking is line 18. Is that to just make all of the chowning work, or is that to like figure out how to do chowning and mapping and everything else in a more intelligent way? So if it's just getting it to work, then I think we should keep that separate.
Yeah, at the very least, yeah, you want to make sure that whatever we're doing on Unix will also work on Windows. But
right.
But maybe with an eye towards, is there something we can do on Windows that's less crappy?
Right.
And the answer might be no. But Windows does have a lot of interesting tricks.
Do you know if we're at parity right now with Windows?
We are not.
We're not. Okay.
Windows, I think, has no notion of permissions for volumes in Kubernetes.
Or it just ignores those fields, basically.
Okay, so maybe we should make sure that these two items don't get mixed up, because we need just basic file permission handling in Windows.
Yeah. So it sounds like Deep, you would be able to help with that. Anybody interested in helping review this?
I can review if somebody gives me a Windows license.
All right, we'll put a question mark next to your name, Brad. And,
okay.
I think there might be GCP Windows machines that we can get you access to.
I'll trade him a Linux license for a Windows license. Oops.
Do we want to call this design or alpha for the quarter?
I would say design is good.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems like there's some preliminary work involved as well.
And then the non-recursive volume ownership, it sounds like the hack is ready to implement a month. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. We should put Jing's name there, and I will review it.
Sounds good.
But it doesn't require any API change, what she proposed, unless like we want it to be behind an API. But we can.
Oh, so you're saying alpha beta GA designation doesn't need?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it doesn't need.
Bug fix. Okay. All right. Next item is volume expansion for stateful sets. Is this something that you're going to continue to follow up with on a month?
Yeah, I've been following up on it. It's looking good, but I think one of the things that they are looking to is determine if the volume supports online or offline. So we might need an API change in CSI driver object.
Okay.
So, but the CAPE is in progress for that.
Okay. And design this quarter or implementation?
It's designed right now, but I don't know. Do we have flexibility to change it if the implementation?
We do.
Okay.
Up to you. You can start with calling it alpha and then change it to design later, or vice versa.
Yeah, we'll keep it design only. We'll see where we go.
I guess it depends, because from the feature tracking point of view, we have to declare the features
before a certain date.
Yeah, we have like this week or next week. I think we should get more clarity on the changes that I have asked the CAPE owner to do. Once he does that, then we
maybe let's call it alpha and plan on tracking it, and then before the feature freeze deadline, we can switch it if we decide.
Okay, that's fine. That's
looks like there's already an enhancement issue for it, so that should be okay. Next item is CSI Volume Health. There was a design kept that I think Nick put out. There was a lot of comments on that. I didn't look at the design, but it looks like there's a lot of activity there. Does anybody know what the status of that is? Is that in a condition to be implemented as alpha this quarter, or is the design still very much in flux?
So I added the CSI part to that spec.
Okay.
So we got a lot of comments. So I think we still need to talk about it. Next week, I will meet Nick in Shanghai, KubeCon.
Okay.
So we will talk about it.
Okay. And so until then, let's keep it as design, and then we can reassess based on that.
Yeah, because he actually has some POC code for the local volume. Now I added the CSI. I think there were some comments saying that, okay, those should be together. So we need to look at it again and see what's the best way.
Cool. So we'll leave that as a P2 design for the quarter, and then Nick is still the correct owner for it.
Yeah, and also because this has a dependency on the Taints API, which Jane is working on. So maybe that one needs to
This is the node shutdown taint thing?
No, not that. This is volume taints.
Oh, volume taints. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that being tracked somewhere here?
It's not here, so maybe that one needs to be added because this one actually depends on that.
Can you explain what the volume taints are trying to do?
It's basically just if the volume. So what we are going to do is if the volume cannot be used, if some problem with it, health problem, then we will taint it, so that the controller will not try to like attach it or do anything with it. So basically that's what that one is.
Okay, and then volume taints could be more generically used for other types of kind of
like populator.
Right. Yeah. So that initially was actually because the data populator thing that was initially this was introduced, but then we thought, okay, maybe this can be used in other places.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember considering it for the data populator and finding. I wasn't convinced that volume taints was the best way to implement that, but let's add item there, and then we can look at the design as proposed. What I'm really interested in, what are the use cases?
Okay. Yeah. I think yes. I think that one was submitted a while ago, and then we thought it can be used for Warren House. So I think she has not updated it with this new use case yet. So we need to. So she will be in Shanghai too. So we can talk about this.
Got it.
Just a quick question. This is Luis.
Hey, Luis.
Hey guys. Hi. What is volume health and how does that work with CSI? We can take it offline if you don't want to spend time here. It's just the first time I've heard of that. Just wondering if that's it.
I'll just quickly, basically, it's just the checking if the volume provision, whether it still exists, whether somebody deleted it, whether it's still mounted or attached, just to indicate that, okay, this volume is not healthy.
Oh, okay. It's not a storage system call. It is.
We do, well, actually it will call the drivers. That's why it has CSI there. Basically, we do need the driver to do something to find out. So, whether the volume exists or not, you do need to find out, right, from
okay, so
whether the volume is still there.
Okay, so is this a new CSI call or is this a...
Yeah, so it's going to be new. So I can send you a link with the spec.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to talk about this at the last CSI community meeting, but I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Thank you.
Let's take it offline. Next item is post-GA entry topology work. This is switching the default storage class to use late binding, backfilling older PVs, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't get to it last quarter. Anybody interested in working on it this quarter? So we'll leave that unassigned. If anyone's interested, this should be fairly easy work. And we have folks who would be happy to guide you through it if you're interested in a small starter project for the SIG. Next item is pass ownership metadata from stateful set to PVC. This was a design that Haley was working on last quarter. I don't know if Haley's on the line.
I am.
Hey, are you still interested in working on this?
Yep.
Okay.
Got like a speculative code, and Michelle is gonna help me review it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. And so do we want to call it design this quarter or alpha?
Probably. Well, let's go with alpha.
Okay. So make sure to create an enhancement issue. And that is all. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next item is entry read-only handling for CSI. This is, I think, highlighted some issues with the way that read-only is handled. And I think Michelle pointed out that this becomes important once we have cloning and populators, which we now have as of 1.15, so we should really do this. Anyone interested in working on this? There is an issue that basically documents what needs to be done. John, this might be interesting for the data populator and the cloning work.
I was biting my tongue because if nobody else is gonna take it, we can at least put my name on there.
Okay. I'll put your name with a question mark because I know you are definitely overloaded.
And I'm slow anyway, so.
We got our highlight feature last quarter was cloning, so that was all you. All right, next item is CSI spec alpha beta GA designation. I am going to continue to work on that. It'll be implementation this quarter. Support for a containerized CSI node plugin in Windows with storage proxy. Deep, is this something that you're still exploring?
Yes, so I got some good progress on it, making various entry changes to handle Windows, mainly on the CSI entry plugin side, and then so that the proxy job is easier, so we can target alpha for 160.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Next item is snapshots. Xing, what's the work that we're going to do here?
Oh, so bring the data. Yeah, so basically just you change the API version, and then there's a one change I think we definitely need to check to see if we need it. I think it has to do with the secrets, whether we need to add
So
a
one
few
more
things.
thing. Sorry, somebody have a comment? Well, I was going to say one more thing I want for snapshots is right now we have a very large sidecar container that contains all the logic for the snapshot controller. And this becomes particularly problematic when we start talking about metrics. In general, the sidecar containers are the responsibility of the storage vendor to deploy and manage. But if you start putting a lot more complicated logic in there, like binding and things like that, then essentially you're saying that the storage vendor is responsible for monitoring and maintaining all of that. And realistically, what we want is the CO should be the entity that is responsible for a lot of that logic, because as the CO, we would be very interested in figuring out when snapshots happen, how long they take, whether they fail or not. And if it's an external component that's completely handled externally, we have no insight into that. And also, it doesn't really make sense for a lot of this logic to be duplicated in every single driver separately. So I think what I would like to see is a proposal where we shift the common bulk logic into a common snapshot controller that is deployed as part of Kubernetes or a Kubernetes deployment, and then a smaller sidecar container that kind of acts like our external attacher or external provisioner do today, where they're smaller and they don't actually handle the bulk of the logic.
What do you mean? So you mean moving some logic in tree? I don't quite understand.
Not in
What do you
tree,
mean?
but into a separate controller.
Separate controller.
I have a comment on this. I've been working or kind of voicing this in the CSI meetings that we may have to rethink how we the sidecar containers for CSI and whose responsibility for that is. So one of the things that I've been voicing, and again, just voicing, I haven't written it down yet, but is that we may have to go back to the beginning and rethink that this code may be either in Kubernetes itself or managed by the CO somehow instead than the storage vendor. So in that same line, it will align better with what you're saying. But again, that's a different conversation, but it is something that I've been starting because the CSI drivers, their contract was the CSI spec, and we have kind of added more to that. So anyway, just bringing that up, that conversation is starting from the CSI Kubernetes implementation team.
Hey, Luis, I think your comments is about all the sidecars, right? It's not just for Snapshot, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's an extremist take. It's unlikely that we're going to do that.
Well, let's start
what I'm looking at is like individual problems. What are the problems that are kind of surfacing right now? And what are the things that the CO must absolutely be responsible for? Having the CO not have any insight into what's going on with volume snapshots is a pretty bad place to be. Today, the way that the volume snapshot controller is written, it's entirely a sidecar container in the CSI driver. And so when a snapshot happens, how long it takes, whether there's errors in it, that kind of thing is completely invisible to us. And in order to solve that, we can kind of follow the model of what we've been doing with the other controllers, where you have a common central controller, PV/PVC controller, attached detached controller that are responsible for the common logic. And then you have a small minimal sidecar container that's responsible for basically last mile communication. And it gives Kubernetes insight into what's going on, basically.
But for attached detached controller and the PV/PVC, those are in tree. So this common controller you're talking about for snapshot, are you talking about moving that in tree or just a separate?
So this is where it gets tricky, right? If we didn't have CRDs, this would be an in-tree controller. This is, that was the old model that we used to follow. And so this is going to be, we're going to have to talk to SIG architecture to say, hey, we have a controller. We need to implement, how do we deploy it? How do we ensure that it's deployed in all the right places? We started having this discussion with CSI, the CSI driver CRDs and things like that. How do you deploy them?
Right.
And then we determined that.
But those are moved back, though. That's right. Those are moved back.
Those are moved back, exactly.
Yeah.
But
so
we still need to do this. I think the SIG has a need for a controller that we need to deploy. The logic was all deployed out of tree. So we need to go to SIG architecture and say, hey, this is a controller that we want. It's important for us. Here are the reasons why it's important. How do we make sure that it is kind of deployed, and what is the story for this? How do we do it?
I'm really confused because I thought that the move towards CSI meant that all of that in-tree stuff that you alluded to would eventually go away. Now the act of turning a PVC into a PV happens entirely in the sidecar, and there is no centralized controller that's involved with that.
And that may well be the way that we're going to do it. But what I want to differentiate between is the responsibility of the storage provider and the responsibility of the container orchestrator. And right now, even imagine if you were...
Are you talking about the stuff that Luis has been bringing up in the CSI meetings? Because I totally agree with that. Like the sidecars need to not be vendor responsibilities; they need to be community responsibilities.
So it's related to that, but not quite that extreme. I think having sidecars completely owned and managed and deployed by Kubernetes is not going to happen realistically. But I think we can take baby steps to kind of make sure that we're not dumping all the logic on the storage provider, right? In the case of Snapshots, the entire controller sits in a sidecar. And every single driver that you have that implements Snapshots basically has duplicate logic for the entire controller deployed as part of their sidecar.
But that's the same as the provisioner. I mean, I don't see the difference.
The difference is that the provisioner doesn't handle the binding logic, right? Once the PV or PVC is created, it doesn't finish that off.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So there is something centralized. Okay.
And so I'd like something similar for the snapshot controller as well.
So
okay, that's
you're
an interesting thought.
Maybe using the PV-PVC as a model to divide what should be the common.
Something very similar to PV-PVC would be good. I agree that the biggest challenge here right now is this kind of SIG architecture guidance to not have any more kind of in-tree components or CRDs.
Right.
So we'll need to think through that. We need to ask them, is it only that the API is external? Can we have a new controller that is core, but it relies on CRDs? We need to explore what that means.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Is there a plan for face-to-face?
We should. That's maybe let's add it to the next meeting agenda.
That would be a great place to sort out this stuff.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Because I think we need to go to the whiteboard to really understand what this impact that we've moved into the storage vendors.
Yeah. I think, that's a good point. I think we're well overdue for a face-to-face. We are also over time for this meeting. We didn't finish this time, so what we'll do is go into the next meeting in 2 weeks to review and finalize the items that we're working on, and then finish the items below line 27 off. I'm going to go ahead and mark those as bold to indicate that we didn't get to them and that they still need to be reviewed. If you have anything between now and then, feel free to add to this document. And also, if you have an item assigned to you and it needs an enhancement issue, please make sure you create that enhancement issue before the feature freeze deadline. That's how the rest of the Kubernetes release team keeps track of the items that are going into the release. If we don't do that, then it could block the PRs and caps and things like that. So please make sure to do that. That's all that I have for today. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about?
It's a good catch up.
All right, great. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Saad.
All right, take care.